Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. When the blazing sun is gone, when the nothing...
I'm a 21-year-old female, and I live in Hamilton, Ontario. This happened to my niece and I. You see, my brother is much older than I am, so his daughter is only 2 years younger than me. I lived with my brother and my niece, so my niece and I were always up late watching horror movies or listening to music. It was about 3 in the morning when my niece said that she was hungry. Seeing as I lived with my brother but worked full-time, I always had money. So I asked her if she wanted to order a pizza. She said yes, but wanted to go with me to pick it up. It was the middle of July and the weather was beautiful, so I agreed. Since having 2 older brothers, I've learned how to take care of myself. We did live in a bad area, but again, I was 17, and having insomnia, I was always out walking at night. Other than an odd car stopping to see if I wanted a date, the streets were pretty quiet, so we got ready and I grabbed my wallet. The pizza store was about a 20-minute walk from the house, and the cool air was nice. We got to the pizza store only to find it closed. No big deal, we knew of another shop that was open until 4 a.m. But that's when it happened. A car turned down the street we were walking on and slowly pulled up to us. I thought it was just going to be,
"Hey, want a date?"
I would say no and he would drive off. But not tonight. He pulls up beside us, and out of this dark blue car, someone yells at us for us to get into the car. I look at my niece and yell for her to run, but she is frozen in place. I pushed her and she bolted with me on her heels. I heard the car door slam shut. And since the street we were running down was long and really didn't have any side streets, I pulled her arm and we headed through a kid's school. I know the city well, and since we were now heading away from home, I had to think of the quickest and safest way to get us back there. By now, my niece is in tears and really doesn't know what to do. I told her to keep running and that everything would be okay. We got to the other side of the school and ran down a side street, so I thought it would be okay to stop running, since both of us were really out of breath at that point. But boy was I wrong. The fucker turned the corner and was speeding down the street like a madman. I grabbed her hand and we took off once more. I turned down another street and threw my niece into the nearest bush and dove in after her. She started to cry out, but I put my hand over her mouth. He was so close to the bush that we were hiding in, and I thought that my heartbeat would give us away. After he looked under a few cars for us, he got back into his car and took off. My niece and I waited for what felt like an hour, but must have been only about 4 or 5 minutes before we jumped up from our spot and ran for home. I kept us on as many one-way streets as possible. We were maybe 3 blocks from home when we saw the lights of a cop car. We ran for it. We told the cop everything that happened, even what the man looked like. He told us that we needed to get home right away. He also said that the man that we described was wanted on 3 counts of murder, and we were lucky to have gotten away. This experience happened to me and my brother 4 years ago, and we're still forced to remember it. My brother is currently serving a 6-year jail sentence for involuntary manslaughter. He gets released in 2017, and we both plan on going on a vacation for at least a month. We haven't decided where to go to just yet. However, he keeps telling me that if he makes it out of prison alive, then we'll go on a vacation. I really hope nothing happens to my brother in prison. My brother's name is Andrew, and my name is Samuel. I was 25 years old, and my brother was 22. We are relatively large guys. My brother is 6'5", 230 pounds, and I'm around 6'6", and weigh about the same as my brother. We are not violent people by any means, but we can handle ourselves extremely well when the situation calls for it. I have an extremely good relationship with my brother, even before this incident occurred. We have always looked out for each other for as long as I can remember. First thing that comes to mind is that me and my brother decided to go to a local nightclub. We got there and had a few drinks and danced with a few of the local women. At this point, I thought that the night would be smooth and nothing would go wrong. I decided to sit down since the dancing was starting to make me sweat, and it was getting quite late, about 2:30 a.m. I was sitting down for no longer than 5 minutes when I noticed two guys eyeballing my brother. They didn't look like they had positive intentions in the way that they were weighing up my brother. My brother came and sat next to me, breathless from the dancing. He said that he needed some water, and I agreed with him to go get some. We walk over to the bar and ask the bartender to give us a bottle of water. The bartender hands one over, and we both take large long gulps of the water. Even at this point, the two men were still glaring at my brother, and we were no more than 10 feet away from them. My brother notices and then asks the guys, "What the fuck are you staring at?" Keep in mind that my brother is really drunk, and I was expecting him to do something like this sooner or later. The two guys then stood up, then walked towards the exit of the nightclub, but not before my brother follows them and pushes one of them outside the exit. The guy he pushed over just stood up and walked towards my brother and tried to get in my brother's face. The guy must have been around 6 feet tall, and his friend was much smaller than he was. He had a hard time holding his friend back. I escorted my brother back into the club, and we got our stuff and then left the club. We were walking for about 15 minutes, then I heard a loud thud. I turned to my right and saw my brother lying face down on the concrete. Standing over him was the same man from the club, and he was holding a crowbar. He stared right at me with fire in his eyes, and then he started violently swinging the crowbar at me. At this point, the man is trying to strike me with that crowbar, but luckily for me, I managed to grab the crowbar and take it away from him. The next thing I remember is being hit on the back of my legs and then crashing to the floor. The man who hit me took the weapon away from his friend, which was also a crowbar, and then he attempted to strike me again. But not before my brother trashes the man with the other crowbar. The man hit the floor, and his accomplice sprinted away. My brother's head was dripping blood, but he was okay. He helped me up and I limped to a nearby bench, and my brother calls for an ambulance. The ambulance arrived and I'm being attended to. Shortly after the ambulance came, the police arrived. They asked me and my brother some questions. About 10 minutes later, the man my brother hit with the crowbar is pronounced dead at the scene. My brother is a bit shaken, but he held it together. I, on the other hand, am in shock, but extremely grateful. I don't know what would have happened to me if my brother had not woken up after being hit by that man. Nothing happens for about a week after the incident. Then 2 police officers came to my mother's house. I live in a separate house from my mother and my brother. My father died when me and my brother were quite young, from cancer, if you really want to know. The 2 police officers tell my brother that he has to come to the police station with them, and he does. At the police station, my brother was questioned about the incident. He is then put into a cell for a few days, and then he is sent to court. The judge sentenced him to 6 years in jail. So far, my brother hasn't had any near-death experiences in jail. But that's the scary part. You never know what the next day holds. 2017 needs to hurry up. I have this friend, Greg, and one day he talked to me about a curious encounter with someone that still gives him the creeps. When Greg was a young boy in his teens, he went to high school in the South. Greg had this friend named Barry. Barry was this really attractive guy, so much so that the sidewalks just sizzled under his feet. As a popular guy, Barry would throw parties that all kinds of people went to. This was how Greg got to know David. David was a good-looking guy with long blonde hair that came just off his shoulders. David seemed nice enough, but was also led pretty easily by other people. So Greg would see him a lot socially at various parties that were being thrown at various houses. Both David and Greg had long hair. According to Greg, having long hair back then meant you were into smoking pot, or at least you were sympathetic to those that did. Greg didn't smoke at that particular time. He had a couple years earlier, but David did, and they both had a few things in common that led to small talk at parties, nothing too heavy or serious. Greg just remembers David would bail out of parties to take care of some business, whatever that was. He never seemed to stay late and always excused himself to leave for something. Hanging out with David was always pretty normal and followed that same pattern. Small talk about life, David lighting up a joint while Greg drank, and then David leaving for whatever it was that he did. Except one night, during a lull in conversation, Greg noticed David staring at him intensely. You know that instinct feeling? Well, Greg described the feeling as being there. He said that he had this feeling once before while he was hitching a ride, and the guy who picked him up kept talking about going to a party. The whole thing kept getting stranger and stranger, so he excused himself when they hit a stoplight. That feeling was back in full force. When Greg noticed David staring at him, it gave him the creeps. And that's when Greg decided that it would be best that he didn't get close to David. Anyway, Greg didn't spend his summers in Houston, where he lived at the time. Instead, he spent them in Portland with his grandfather. So late one summer up in Portland, who does Greg see on his TV but his casual party buddy, David Owen Brooks? He and another teenager, Elmer Wayne Henley, had assisted a local Houston man named Dean Corll in raping and murdering up to 24 young boys over the past couple of years. Their MO was to invite the boys over to a party, overpower them, chain them up to a board, and torture them before killing them. One night in August of 1973, Elmer Wayne Henley finally put an end to it and shot Dean Corll, and everything else unraveled after that as they helped the police dig up the bodies. It made national news, and every night another detail, another victim, was revealed. They mostly buried their victims under a boat shed or in various beaches around the area. 40 years later, and they're still trying to identify the victims. It is believed that their true victim count is much higher than 28. Before you ask, Barry wasn't a victim, and Greg never met Corll or Henley. Brooks insisted that he only watched the murders, but never participated. It didn't help him that much. He's still serving time in jail, likely for the rest of his life. Greg said that in this period of his life, in some ways it's better not to be drop-dead attractive, any more attraction from the guy I could have been underneath that boat shed. I don't think Greg gives himself enough credit. I think Greg had strong instinct, whatever that is, and that David likely knew that about him, which is why he was never targeted. In any event, Greg was lucky as hell he was never invited to a private party with that particular trio of people. Thank God David was never more than his casual acquaintance.